There's a simple country smile on the face of a new city girl. She says the roof it leaks and the rent is high. There's no better place in the world. It's a long way down, back to the bottom.
All right, Greer, I am so happy to have you here today with me on Beneath the Surface. So, really excited to note that you are the second creator here in our creator series at Beneath the Surface. Very, very excited. We've got a lot of things, out there in the land of, I'm just going to say, people and culture that are cooking. And it just happens to be, we've got some great women creators, leaders, thinkers just making it happen. So as I start all my Beneath the Surfaces, I go back to say, where did we begin? Where did we meet each other? I don't even remember, to be quite honest with you. I know.
First, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
Greer. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a fair-skinned woman. I have long brown hair. I'm wearing white headphones, tan sweatshirt, and wire-rimmed glasses. And over my shoulder, you'll see a little stained glass dog of my best boy. But yeah, we met, I think, just through LinkedIn. I think we just had been interacting through LinkedIn, and I'm a big person who's like, I'll just shoot my shot and see if we want to talk. And I think we've just kind of formed a relationship and have stayed in touch from there. So
You are right.
a good plug to reach out to people if you want to talk to them, because the worst they'll say is no. And look at where this got us. So
Exactly.
I think we just chatted on LinkedIn.
You are right. And I think, it's funny. I was speaking to a guest last week, and I think we had the same recall. And it was just, that the LinkedIn is just the place you'd love to, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
yeah, we might have some. I think I'm coining the term egg throwing during this session as well. But hey, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of you. You have some really exciting things going on as part of the whole kind of creator piece. But before we jump into that, just tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. So again, I'm Greer. I have been in HR for a very long time, and I'm a disabled person. So I live with something called ankylosing spondylitis. You've probably never heard of it before, but you probably have heard of rheumatoid arthritis. So rheumatoid's all like your little tiny joints. Ankylosing is all your big joints, like my neck, my shoulders, my back, things like that. So it's degenerative. There's no cure for it. And so I'm somebody who has kind of both of those identities. I've been in HR where I have to support people through, leaves of absence or caretaker leave or transitions back to work. And I didn't realize I was doing a really terrible job at it until I had to go out on a leave of absence for my own health. And so right now, I'm working on just putting together some resources and a conversation around how can we show up better for disabled people in the workplace? Because again, you look at me, I don't look disabled. I don't look like there's anything wrong with me. However, I need as many resources and support as somebody who does show up visually with those visual cues. And so, I've been in HR and I'm really just trying to bring the human back to it because, people don't realize it, but 1 in 4 of your team members right now are disabled, whether or not they've disclosed it to you. And so if there's anything that's guaranteed to us in our lifetime, it's that disability will come to our doorstep. So I would really like to make it proactive instead of reactive when that happens for people like me and other people on our team.
Yeah, no, I think you raise a really good point. And I just want to back up. So as someone who performs or works as an HR professional in a professional company setting,
Mhm.
share with us. I want to, before we kind of jump into some of the exciting stuff, I want to kind of help people understand, for folks that are watching that are not HR professionals, like, what does that really look like in the workplace, right? So from where you're sitting right now, taking a step back, because, one of the things that we try, and I am committed to doing as beneath the surface sort of, scales, is really help people understand what's really going on, right? From
Mhm.
a productive place and from a place where we cite the truth, we walk in our truth, and then we kind of inspire from there. So backing up into you working as an HR professional inside of an organization, like help,
Mhm.
because people think that we're just 1-800 people. Like, call
Mhm.
us up, what size t-shirt do I wear for the picnic? Benefits, my tooth hurts. What help me understand the role that you were in that sort of led you to this?
Yeah, so I have been supporting teams. I have been that go-to person, like you're talking about, whether it's calling and getting a t-shirt size, or it's like, hey, there was a death and we need to figure out how to kind of facilitate that with the team and support their family and things like that. So HR does a lot of stuff behind the scenes that people wouldn't ever understand or recognize. And so when it comes to disability, it's our job as HR professionals to ensure that managers are supported, that individuals who are the ones with the disability know their rights. They feel supported. They know what they have to do to, take time off, how much time can they take off? How do they communicate that, right? Like I still to this day could not articulate the laws to you that govern all of this disability in the workplace because we're not taught it. And I have my master's in IO psychology as well. And accessibility and disability aren't in there either. And so as HR professionals, we are only as educated and competent as we can educate ourselves and
Right.
give ourselves kind of that leg up and being able to, show up positively. But when you're doing things like you said, like benefits, training and development, we're onboarding, we're doing recruiting, accessibility and disability really aren't a priority. And so I think what we really need to do is focus on how we can build it into everything that we're doing, right? Accessibility should be the baseline and the underpinning of everything that we do in HR. But, in my experience, it's not there. It really isn't. It's an afterthought. It's a negative. People are biased against it. People are scared in the workplace to share that they are disabled and they need accommodations. And so I really don't think that we are educated, we are supported. I don't think we are doing anybody a good service right now, currently, if you're disabled in the workplace. And so it's up to us to educate ourselves.
Right.
However, it's hard to find that information and it's hard to know what to do, especially when you're already working 50 hours a week and, wearing a ton of hats that aren't HR or what you were hired for in the first place.
Right. So there's definitely, you said a lot there, and there's a lot to unpack. So
Mhm.
again, stepping back into, you know, from the HR professional, right? Like what we're expected to do or asked to do, right? In
Mhm.
accordance to both our role, which i.e. means job description, and
Mhm.
then there's this, how do I want to say this? There's this, kind of secret, unknowing to our employees or even to the public of a tremendous amount of laws that we
Mhm.
are required to completely understand. And depending on the position that you hold, whether that's level of expertise, geographical, global, et cetera, there's a lot that, sort of covers that, right?
Mhm.
So I'm trying to kind of you frame this out. So you in the position that you were slash are holding right in this
Mhm.
space were are working with folks to help kind of transition or even how do I want to say this not transition, define
Mm-hmm.
what it all means, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's sort of two roads that run parallel here, but ironically very separate from each other. So you've got the
Mm-hmm.
HR professional who is hired by the company and an advocate for employees. But then you've got employees, right, who are working in the company and have all of these rights. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, like more times than not have no idea what those rights
Mm-hmm.
are. And those rights
Mm-hmm.
are very specific. I'm going to use the phrase micro specific to now down to the county you're in, not even
Mm-hmm.
just the city or the state, because depending on where you live, we can just pick on the Bay Area, for instance. We know for a fact that many of these things, draw all the way down to each county because it's that specific.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, what am I getting at here? I'm getting at the fact that there's a whole bunch of information that one needs to possess as an HR practitioner, doesn't matter what level, leader, all the way through to individual contributor, and what that looks like typically to be a real advocate for the employee
Mm-hmm.
during, this particular event and or not event, right? Just basic onboarding and partnership, right? Guidance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, and this is something I'm learning too, right? So all of the things that exist right now, those are focused on compliance, right? So all of these laws, all of these things, they're all compliant, and compliance is the bar, and the bar is on the floor, right? So this is the minimum amount of what we should be doing to create an accessible work environment. And so that's what we as HR professionals take as the gold standard, right? Is like, okay, this is compliance, so this is what we have to do. Now, there's a difference, as I'm learning again, between compliance and accessibility. And so right now, we are focused on this compliant piece of like checking all of the boxes that the government tells us that we have to do. We're not focused on making things accessible. So accessible is really taking into account like, what does it mean for every single person to be able to interact with this kind of whatever, whether it's, content, if it's a video, if it's a process or a program. We have to think about the accessibility piece, not the compliance piece. However, as HR professionals, what we have access to is that compliance piece. What we're held to standard against is compliance. And so that's kind of where we default, especially because we wear so many hats, right? So I think we're kind of set up to fail in a lot of ways in the HR profession because we are given these standards of what we have to do, but they're not meeting our team members where they need to be met at the end of the day. So there's this dance that we have to do to say, okay, here's what my company and here's what the government is telling me to do. But here's what I'm hearing from the individual that their doctor is recommending that they need, or that they're just telling me that they need. I think we default more to what the law is versus believing individuals. And in my opinion, that should be the bar. The bar should be believe the individual on what they need and support them to get through it themselves. But, unfortunately, that's not how work is set up. And you can discriminate against disabled people in certain situations because they're not performing or whatever it is. So we really do need to understand kind of what is compliance, but what are we doing to make it accessible as HR individuals?
Right. And when you say we, you mean who specifically?
I mean, HR. It's our responsibility. HR, just like any other part of an organization, we have to stay up with things. We have to continue to learn, right? We constantly are telling our team members about growth mindset and, increasing your competence in a certain, area. And we have to do the same thing. Now it's hard to kind of carve out time for that to be focused on disability and accessibility because there are so many other things going on in the organization, but it is our responsibility. We are the culture keepers. We are the people who make it possible for people to show up every day. And so, yeah, I think while it is a trickle down, This kind of stuff comes from the top. The permissions come from the top. Visibility needs to come from the top. As HR, we need to be educating. We need to be bringing these conversations to those senior leaders so that they do understand. And if you are a senior leader, and you have a disability, share it, right? People want to feel seen. That's something that helps people feel safe. And so, long story short, I think as HR people, it's our responsibility to make it safe for people to show up as their whole selves at work, right? We think about engagement surveys and it says, I can bring my whole self to work. Don't ask me that if you're not going to listen to the response and then create a safe place for me to be able to do that. And so I think, if we're as HR people going to continue to ask questions like that, we have to come to the table with solutions when we get the answers to those questions.
Yeah. And I would say too, in response to that, what's coming up pretty regularly thematically during these guest interviews at Beneath the Surface is, do we understand what words really mean, right? Like you might say, we bring our whole selves. And what does that really mean in the context of work as being an employee, right? So again, this isn't really about levels or jobs, because it doesn't matter what level or job. You could be, frankly, the owner of the company, arguably. But when you enter the workspace, you are legitimately, from a legal perspective, an employee of the company, right? Like this is really peeling back the layers here. And that's, at Holistically HR, that's our focus, right? It's like really peeling back the layers. What does this all mean so that people can start connecting the dots? And so when I hear you say, this is what we should be doing, well, it really is. And I know this is one of those cliches that's overused, but it's like leading from the top, right? If a company can be 350,000 people, it can be 10 people, but leading from the top, right, is really like looking at the population holistically and saying, throughout our major pillars, right? And the pillars can look like whether it's talent recruiting or dev, compliance, et cetera, do we have our baselines covered? And as it specifically relates to the employee experience, right, where most argue that this topic should fall under, right? Because it does arguably, fall under HR, risk and compliance. It does, right, as a topic, but it also falls under, sort of the employee engagement realm of things, because it's how you're engaging, how one is being engaged into the company, the recruiting process, the onboarding process, right? And to your point earlier, yeah, hey, I've been around for a while, no secret. It is what it is. And I'm just going to say it, another egg throwing moment. Yeah, admitting that you might possibly have a disability, or you might need, better yet, this is a good one, an ADA accommodation. People come in with their arms cut off and their heads wrapped up and, oh, no, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. And again, throw the eggs here, because that's the truth. I mean, that is really the bottom line of how it used to be. I don't know that we're as bad as we used to be. And I don't mean you, me, and or the HR profession. I just want to make sure the viewers understand that. I just mean like the feeling, right? Like the perception was. And there was a point in time, where, and there's a lot of debate around this, and I'm just going to say it as I know it, in applications, in the application process, disclosure of disability, right? And we could go down that rabbit hole for a few days. Are the application processes these days even up to date, and are they compliant? I mean, for goodness sake, we won't even go down there. But how that relates to this topic is disability is and will continue to be a very important aspect of that, disclosure, because without disclosure, one does not understand, whether it's the frontline employee human resources person engaging, right, with the potential applicant that then becomes the candidate, that then becomes the employee, right, for the experience. And then how does the company get put on notice? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a proactive way. So I'm purposely walking through these steps with you to help our viewers kind of gain some context on like the kind of, okay, where have we been with this without dragging them through yesteryear, but kind of where we are today before we jump into, your creation and what Rethink Ability is all about. So yes, to kind of capitalize here on, it's all about the compliance, and the compliance just isn't good enough, my words. And quite frankly, it's not up to date. And that's one of the things that I have been interestingly benefiting from. And I don't mean that I mean it in a learning way, because as I'm talking to guests, and, many of us have been around for quite some time, we're realizing, oh, yeah, you know what? We're actually still referring to and teaching, mentoring folks about stuff that was written 900 years ago. Like, what on earth? This doesn't even make any sense. So now there's this, and you're probably feeling it, hence the folks that you've been partnering with and the energy that you've been taking into this space. Like, hi, everyone, wake up call. We need to get on this.
Yeah,
So
we live in a
stop
very,
blabbering.
so I took a lot of notes because I have a disability and my brain fog is very heavy today, right? So like simple accommodation right there is, you don't have to judge me because I'm looking down and writing while you're talking, right? So like real easy, things like that. That's allowing people to show up as their whole selves. But I think it's important to note a few things. So first, disability is still taboo. It still has a stigma and people are scared of what they don't understand.
Yep.
Right. So just a big thing to lay out. And if you think about it, our workplaces today are built on ableist principles for neurotypical people, right, who don't have any of these needs that we're talking about right now. And so as we think about this, and then there's no representation, then there's no visibility of people with disabilities, unless maybe you start that ERG, right? And it's completely led by people who have disabilities, who aren't being compensated for it. It's on top of their job, and they're now responsible for educating the rest of the company about what disability at work means, right? Like, we're really setting people up to fail. And I think it's important to note that even in our systems, they're very ableist, right? So like even in performance management, like we're not going to talk about the nitty gritty of everything, but if you can't even get an interview because you've made an accommodations request in the interview process, and then the first round is over before they can even process that request, you're automatically cut out from that job. You don't even have a shot, right? So then by the time you get into the organization, if you're lucky enough as a disabled person to get hired into an organization, because we are seen as liabilities to organizations, there's a high chance you're going to be performance managed out at some point because of your needs, because of the flexibility, RTO, return to office. Having remote work during COVID was very, very, very convenient for organizations to be able to do. And it brought in the highest number of disabled workers into teams because of that. And now we're seeing RTO. Who are the people who are getting fired? It's the disabled people who cannot come back into work.
So this is very interesting. I'm going to stop you there for 1 second. So we're just going to
Please.
back up with the acronyms just so that people understand. ERG is an employee resource group, right? Help us real quick understand what that is.
So that's like an affinity group inside of an organization. So it's usually there's usually a sponsor from the C-suite or a higher level who basically says, like, I'm going to be the main stakeholder and ensure success and make sure they have the resources and visibility. But the ERGs are generally run by employees because it's an employee resource group. So it's you could think of it from there is a lot of like Blacks at, right? There is disability at, there are all of those different kinds of affinity groups. And so this is where they put all of the responsibility of disability or of these different affinity groups on these ERGs. And they say, oh, we're giving you $600 a quarter. You should be able to solve this problem. And so it's like this unintentional thing that people are doing in organizations because the optics are good. I mean, these people will tell you exactly what they need if you listen to them. Yeah, but we don't give them the space.
It's quite interesting too. Gosh, it just like popped in, how disconnected, right? When I really think about it, because of course I've been a part of this, right? In my many positions and experiences, like, yeah, we're going to have an ERG for X, Y, and Z, but it's the age old, like, who should really, I'm going to use the word lead this, not own it, lead it, right? Because there are many dots that connect, and arguably we're not, and we haven't been. The greater we have not been connecting these dots because it is holistically part of the larger picture, right? So we take these things and we, kind of separate them out into groups, hence some of the folks that you just mentioned, right? So how does that realistically incorporate, whether it's disability, whether it's a different culture group into the fabric of a company? Well, it kind of really doesn't.
No, it's an add-on. I mean, I think if you think about it, it's this like external thing that companies are doing. It feels good for companies to say, oh, go listen to the speaker that we're bringing in. Great. How are you building what they're teaching us into the culture? How are you building that into how people are rewarded and compensated? Right. How are you teaching this and uplifting behaviors for leadership to be able to employ it? You're not. And so it's just these kind of talks, right? It's just putting someone on a stage. Frankly, it's kind of tokenizing people with these experiences because it puts the onus on me as a disabled person to educate my peers and my leaders about what I need as a disabled person. And that's not right. We shouldn't be putting the onus on the individual living with the disability to have to advocate for themselves. And that's what these ERGs are doing. It's saying, hey, this is me. I want to bring this space. I want to share my story. I want to bring people along with me. But again, it puts the responsibility on the disabled person who needs the support in the first place. And so I don't think, unless this comes from the top, this is a culture initiative, unless it comes from the C-suite and is supported and attended by the C-suite, why would I join? Why would anybody join, right? Especially because it's not tied to my KPIs or my OKRs, and I'm not receiving a compensation bonus because I attended all of these ERG events. It's because of, I hit my sales goals or I did whatever my technical goals were. And so it's kind of lip service, frankly. Like, it's a feel-good activity for the leadership to say, hey, we brought this person in and it's going to be great. But then what? In my opinion, don't do it at all. Don't do it at all. It's kind of like how I feel about engagement surveys. Like, if you're going to ask the question and then you're not going to take any action based on the information you got, don't ask. Just don't ask. So don't bring these groups in to have these conversations if you're not going to hear what disabled people need and then make a change in your organization on it. It's not worth it for anybody.
Well, and to your point, I think that's where it gets a little bit dicey because I know for a fact that you do have organizations out there that will say, you know what, we're not going to, because we don't want to address it. We know that we've got this compliance in the background, and we know we have our code of ethics, blah, 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 that people sign upon, right? Starting theoretically with the application, right? And we kind of, and I say we, meaning any company, right? This is how we are choosing, and believe you me, to the audience watching, this is a very planned choice, right? You know that, I know that, many HR professionals know that. Don't have to agree with me, but this is typically how it works, right?
Yeah.
So either you're out there and you're really embracing it as an HR person and a leadership team on behalf of the company. It starts, it starts in the recruiting and the onboarding, right? I'm sorry, not the onboarding, the actual recruiting process, right? And it should theoretically follow through to onboarding once you're hired as an employee, and then thread throughout your career, right? You've got that. Then you've got the, hey, we know what the compliance says about where we are specifically in our geographical location. And here's how we're going to kind of hit those high points. We're going to have our compliance book and all that kind of stuff in the background. We're going to cross our fingers and make it work the best that we can. And should it arise, we'll deal with it at that point. Is there anything I missed there?
No, I think it's reactive. I think right now disability is reactive, much like any other policy in the organization. And we're people. These are people. So we have to be flexible. We have to be agile, and we have to recognize that like one day isn't going to look the same as the next day for a disabled person. I think we've all heard the saying, like, you've met one autistic person. So you've met one autistic person. They're not a monolith. And so even if you do have those compliance policies, like somebody who might also have ankylosing spondylitis might need different things than I need. And so, yeah, these compliance things treat everybody the same. And we can't do that. We aren't monoliths. We are humans with individual needs, and they're going to change and not be linear. And that's okay. That's the human experience.
Right. So maybe a bit of an egg throwing question here. How do we proactively and creatively meet ourselves where we are today when we are partnering with the folks that say, you know what, just come to work. We're hiring you to do a job. Show up, put your shoes on, come to work, or, log in, whatever it is, home, in office. Great. That's your business. None of our business. What do you say to that?
I would say not everybody could put shoes on, and it starts there. That's as small as it starts, is like, even in the language there, like you're cutting people out, and it's unintentional. And so I think it's people, I'm learning right now that people are scared. People are scared to say the wrong thing, so they don't say anything. And so the small things that I would recommend right now are to ask questions, right? I will tell you what I need. I will tell you how I need to best show up. I will tell you how I need you to support me in my job. And so if you have disabled people on your teams, believe them. It's free. It's free. It's compliant. Just believe them. Because by the time somebody has shared with you that they have a disability, they've gone over it in their mind 10,000 times about whether or not it's safe for them to disclose that to you. And so by the time it's been brought and you're now aware of it, every single situation they've gone over in their head, they've weighed the pros and cons, and they've decided that they need to disclose this more than they need to keep it a secret. And so the first thing I would recommend that you do is have conversations and believe your disabled team members. It's really that simple.
And you're talking from the company perspective, right?
Yeah, from the HR perspective, from the leadership perspective, from any perspective where there is a dynamic of power happening, right? Because I am powerless as a disabled person because you get to make the decision as the HR person on how this is going to get communicated to my manager and how this is going to be presented to leadership and things like that. And so, yes, as people in positions of power, we need to prioritize the needs of our disabled team members and believe them when they share them with us.
Right. And again, it does start at the application.
Mm-hmm.
It does during the application process.
I mean, we talk about it in HR, and a team member's experience is hire to retire. And hire starts when somebody puts the application in. And in a lot of ways, again, like we said, even the application process is not accessible. And so you're missing a whole swath of people from even applying to that job because they can't access the application process. So
That's right.
it's not even starting once the person's in the organization. It's making sure that the person can even put their resume in to possibly be considered to be part of the organization.
Yeah, and that's a huge rabbit hole we could probably talk about for a couple of weeks, but we'll try to stay, true to the topic. I think the other piece here that is important specifically for HR, I'm just going to say HR practitioners, is the fact that there is a law. It's the American with Disabilities Act. It's there. It's not going away. Arguably, whether is it?
Oh yeah, they're taking away our rights. Yeah, it's going away. I encourage everybody here to read it, to just read up on some news sources. But yes, they unfortunately are coming for our rights.
Well, okay. This is where it gets interesting at BTS. So 5 minutes ago, I thought that the ADA was something that is intact, outdated, but mandatory as an HR practitioner to ensure that we were educated and incorporate, abide by. So now you've just shared with me in the moment that they are coming for it. Tell me what that means.
Yeah, so I'm looking on my phone right now because again, my brain fog is very bad right now. And so the first thing that comes up when you search ADA is the Trump administration withdrew 11 pieces of ADA guidance. So they are immediately looking to remove pieces, different requirements. So let's see, we've got, excuse me. So there's lawsuits. So let's see, what is being withdrawn? This is a big one. So we see 5 pieces of guidance specifically addressing COVID-19, including caregivers, interpreters, and maintenance for retail stores, for example. So people who work in retail can be disabled. Obviously, we have disabled people who shop and go into these stores as well. They're taking away, accessible changing rooms. They're taking away the fact that the aisles are wide enough. I mean, we're seeing in press conferences that are happening with the White House that they have pretty much immediately removed American Sign Language interpreters, which then tells other organizations it's okay for you to also remove these things from your organization. And so the government is setting the tone right now of like, we're going to take stuff away. We're seeing lots of disabled people protesting for their rights. And we're seeing people in wheelchairs being arrested, being picked up physically in their wheelchairs off the Capitol steps. And so we have to fight for the rights that we have because they are actively being taken away from us. But I highly encourage anybody listening to this to go read about the ADA, where we're at right now, and the rights that are kind of dissolving in front of our eyes.
Okay, so beneath the surface here, we're pretty committed. I'm pretty committed not to dive too much into the politics, but where it comes into play and it's important that we acknowledge it. I think that here, because this is frankly news to me, is this something that has been, kind of signed off on? So it's definitely signed off on. Okay.
Yeah. And, we're lucky to have people who are part of what we're talking about in this Rethink Ability Summit who are going to talk about the impact of what's happening at the government level and how it is impacting people in the workplace. So It is a big thing. We've got disability advocates on the Hill every single day. I mean, I have to call out Keely Cat Wells. She's doing absolutely phenomenal work to make sure that people like me can show up and that I do maintain the rights that I have. So it's disabled people fighting for disabled people's rights right now.
Well, and so when I peel back the layer here, because this is really important before we kind of jump into your awesome project, um, you know, when in doubt, as we would always say from an HR practitioner perspective, frankly, it is going back, right, to what I'll just say, what's in black and white, right? Because when you're in these super difficult employee relations situations, right, it should never just be interpreted, right, by, popular opinion or what the HR practitioner thinks or the leader. It really needs to go back to the law.
Mm-hmm.
Call me old fashioned, whatever the bottom line is. Now, my long winded question here is that, if this stuff is being taken, I'm just going to use my own words, off the books, what does that mean for a company, right? Because you and I both know there's more than a fair share of what we would, I mean, this definitely falls under the employee relations umbrella as well, right? So when it becomes reactive as opposed to proactive, like how we were referring to in the beginning, how we can proactively engage, sometimes these things go into reactive mode through poor performance or discrimination. So my question here, and I'm laying this out on purpose so the regular person can follow along with what really goes on in the workplace. With these going away, how does an employee work to defend themselves? And you might say, hey, you know what, Gina, I don't have the answer right now because all this stuff is just brand new,
Yeah, that's the hard stuff. So I don't have an answer for that. We do have a session that I'm really excited about coming up for the disabled employee, whether or not they have disclosed, so that they can understand this is how I am legally allowed to show up. These are the things that maybe in the interview process are red flags that I should be accounting for. So really talking about this kind of stuff, like we have a session. Julie Harris, who's absolutely phenomenal, is going to be leading that session. But excellent. I mean, as an employee right now, it's different person to person because people's safety are different, right? I'm a white woman, so I have a lot of privilege, and I have more privilege to be able to disclose that I have a disability than somebody who has a different color skin than I do, frankly, right? And so, or a name that doesn't sound like it's from America, right? And so we have to kind of go case by case and have to understand that, like, it's not safe for a lot of disabled people to tell you they're disabled in the workplace. So we can't expect people to do that all of the time. All we can do is try and create systems internally so that when people do disclose, it is safe and they can get what they need, and that there is no discrimination that comes along with it.
So you just said that perfectly into the bridge here that I want to create, which is going to be a little sarcastic, but yet again, this falls into the realm of the HR, the people and culture, professional, leader, teams, specialist, whatever you're used to, right? And I say yet again because, again, the normal, regular, everyday person doesn't really understand, rightfully so, or probably appreciate how much really does fall on the HR department, if you will. And so this is yet another kind of hot topic, right, amongst others that are in the market right now that really kind of, okay, it was kind of always in our peripheral, if you will, but now even more so because with these laws that are going away, it's more now left for interpretation. And so, what does that mean from a company perspective? In my opinion, as someone who's been around for a long time, it means that HR really needs to, HR leadership of any company, whether it's a company of 2 or a company of 350,000 people. It's really taking it by the horns, right? And saying, okay, we acknowledge what's going on. And I like to say, and we're filling the space between. So this is how company X sees this based on our company handbook code of ethics. And, for those listening out there who are on this road or care about this and are, what's the action? What's the resolution? I'm hearing this a lot from my clients and just people inquiring. It's like, okay, let's think about this in a really smart way, right? Like if the umbrella for anything is going away or there's not true governance, how do you then take that internally and create that safety, not only for your leadership team, but for the people that are working for the company? And I think
Yeah.
that's one of those, this is one of those moments. So we want people to, at least with this, acknowledging this, to walk away with, okay, if we have, outside of the resources and the things that you're going to talk about next, it's like that practical solutioning, or as I call it, just-in-time solutioning for this.
Yeah, that's where we're at right now. I think we're seeing lots of layoffs happen. So people are being stretched even more thin. And especially in the HR department, we see HR is usually the first affected by layoffs because we will never be seen as a revenue generating center in an organization. And so as HR people, we have a lot of weight on our shoulders and not a lot of support. So I think we just have to come in community with one another. We can't depend on large organizations right now. I'm not going to name any specific ones, but I'm sure you know who I'm talking about.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, who are, not really standing up to the moment and meeting us where we are. And so because of that, these are our best practice organizations. We have to fill the gaps, like you're saying. And so that's kind of where this whole project has come from that I'm working on, is there is a big gap. And I'm not going to be able to upskill myself with the current resources and tools and conversations that are out there. And so let's create them ourselves and let's share them freely and broadly so that this isn't a conversation that we continue to have. It is active. It is something where people know what to do and know what actions that they even can take, because again, disability is taboo and people are scared of what they don't understand.
Right. And the one thing I just, there's one elephant, sorry, Willie joins every now and then. One elephant in the room that I'd like to address, and we won't go down this because this is definitely a rabbit hole, but it's the age old, performance management, right? And disability, right? It's sort of when there's perception of an employee who, all right, let me back up. An employee is not performing well and then has the courage or just decides in that moment, because they're not performing well and they know why they're not performing well, and it happens to be because of a disability, where they then disclose. And I think this kind of, I'm just going to call it conundrum, right, has been accumulating over, God knows, I don't have the metrics on this, but for some time, I will say. And I think now leaders, companies, organizations, however you want to address it, are saying, well, so-and-so is disclosing a disability as an excuse because they're not performing.
And
Right.
now they're going out on a leave, right? It's that whole thing. Yep.
Right. And so I just, again, hold your eggs. They're expensive before you throw them at me. Right. Because I pretty much have seen it all. And the bottom line here is that, over time, especially where we are now today, our job descriptions are not written as well as they should be. And I'm not going down that rabbit hole. And now we have the whole AI, sort of integration into this whole process, which one might say can add insult to injury, but we're still in an experimental mode. However, then you get to finally, after 8,000 years of interviewing, you hire the applicant slash candidate into employee status. Suddenly the employee is not performing. And voila. Well, the employee happens to have a disability.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm mentioning all this not to confuse all of what we've talked about, but to surface something that is, not to sound cliche here, buried beneath the surface, but everybody knows that it exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of two ways of looking at this. Well, as someone who's joined a company and now working, right? Yeah, I'm not literally me, but person X, yes, I have a disability. I wasn't comfortable disclosing it. I am in a job that, frankly, I'm now doing that I didn't even know I was really doing because the job description wasn't written correctly. But I'm going with the flow because I need the job and I need the money. And now it is working it's not working with me because of my disability. So I am disclosing my disability. And people are like, they disclosed it because they're not performing well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just it's so stigmatized and people don't understand it. And it will feel like an excuse to the manager who didn't know for 2 years that this person on their team had a disability, right?
Right.
I think this is a whole fundamental conversation around the pitfalls
Absolutely.
of performance management overall, to be honest with you, because of how we set things up. This is why things happen. But we don't skill our managers up to be able to handle these situations over time. We don't skill them up
Understood.
to be able to have these conversations. We don't skill them up to say, oh, you know what? Someone is underperforming. So instead of going straight to a PIP, because that's what the policy says,
Right.
how do I have a conversation with this person around, do you have clear expectations? Do you know what success looks like in your role? Are there any reasonable accommodations that we can provide for you? Do you need a short-term leave of absence to kind of focus on your health? Managers don't think about that stuff. They think, uh-oh, this person isn't performing. That reflects on me. Now I need to do something about it. And the doing something about it is usually some sort of, coming down on them, saying, hey, you're not performing. So I'm going to write it down so that it's documented and we can come back to this. And you can go out on your leave of absence, but when you come back,
Right.
you're going to be on a PIP, right? So we aren't skilled up enough to have these conversations effectively as managers and leaders, and nothing's going to change until that happens, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll get out of the or I should say I'll pivot out of the HR speak here because these are the things that I think I'm actually not I think I'm very confident moving forward needed to be a part of this conversation to sort of shape it holistically overall before we jump into your exciting project, but just to provide some baseline into the realities of things, because this is just one of those topics.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
okay, um, and so tell us a little bit about Rethink Ability,
Mm-hmm.
and how where we go from here.
All the
How
things,
you
yeah.
started. Yeah, all the things Rethink Ability.
Yeah. So this project started because, again, I live with a disability and I need to create the spaces that I need to be successful. But long ago, I started a performance management community. So this is kind of in my blood, as you'll start to learn. I had a leadership team for that. We were doing consistent kind of like round tables and conversations. And as we were planning for this year, there's another gal on the leadership team. Her name is Marian Anderson. Couldn't do this
Okay.
without her. We were just chatting and we're like, disability has to play into performance in some way, right? Like we have to cover this. We have to start talking about it freely. And so she's got a podcast that she runs with a couple other people called The Elephant in the Org. And so what we did is we ran a 6-episode limited series episode around disability and performance and how it intersects. So we had those conversations, and then we were like, we can do more. So we started to do on a weekly basis little highlights of individuals with the disability that they live with, how it manifests, what they want their team members to know, how their team members can show up to support them, all of those kinds of things to be able to start the conversation.
Right.
And then we're like, yeah, we can definitely go one step further. And that's kind of where this summit has come out of. So we're running a free virtual 3-day summit online from October 28th through 30th. I've got a steering committee of 12 different people who, are disability advocates, who have different disabilities themselves, CEOs, CTOs who are doing the work. And they advised me on what we should be talking about in these different sessions. And so they came to me, and we've got 16 different sessions now that are popped up because of this steering committee. And so all the steering committee members are responsible for at least one session.
Okay.
And they're kind of shepherding it through to completion. They're the stakeholder. So remember how we were talking about ERGs and the senior level stakeholder? We're kind of taking that approach with this as well. And so they are here to kind of come up with these sessions. So as we're looking at the screen right now, you can see this is our day one schedule. And so we are kicking off our entire programming with the impact of the current political climate, right? Because it is such a stage setting conversation around like what is actually even legally happening in the workplace right now when it comes to disability. So all of these sessions have some really, really great contributors. We talked a lot about language. So like ableist language, that is really kind of what everything is founded in. And so on day one, we've got Words Create Worlds, and Danny Herrera, Katarina Rivera are helping us lead those sessions on how do we actually think around ableist language and what are some changes that we can make and how can we kind of hold ourselves accountable to monitoring what's coming out of our mouths, right? Because we say things very consistently like, that's my blind spot. That's very ableist, right? We know what we're meaning, but like that's offensive to somebody. And so thinking about how we can show up differently is really important. So yeah, we've got 3 days, full
3 days.
different kinds of content for each day. You can sign up through the website. So if you click on any of these underlined sessions, it'll take you directly to a page where you can get a calendar invite sent directly to your calendar. But it's all free. Everything is going to be available asynchronously afterwards for any sort of access or wanting to go back and refer to it. And then we actually are also partnering with the Culture and People Geeks community to be having live conversations during these sessions too, because part of what we don't do as HR people is wrestle with the content, right? We join these sessions, we hear it, and then we move on. But what we really need to do is get our hands onto it. And so the People Geeks community, which again is another free community that is supporting us, is going to be helping us have those hard conversations and really figure out how to put this into action. After that, we're going to be launching a formal chapter community with them to ensure that this conversation keeps going. This can't be a one and done. This has to be, how do we actually infuse disability rights into every single thing we do as an organization? And so really what we're focusing on next is how do we keep these conversations going? How do we find organizations or find communities, really less about organizations, more about other communities that have critical mass that we can help upskill their team members, right? So really trying to approach this not from like I'm creating my own like little thing that you have to apply to be part of, but more of how can we just broadly knowledge share? How can we upskill everybody within this, within the HR function to be able to have these conversations? And we've also got sessions for senior leaders. We've got sessions for ERG leaders. We've got sessions for the disabled employee themselves. And so we really want people to be able to see themselves doing this work and understanding it might be intimidating, but it's really not that hard. It just takes intention with what you're doing.
Right. So at Beneath the Surface, how do we help you help this movement, right? Because it's obviously a very important movement. So if you can reiterate again, who should be thinking about or who should attend?
Yeah. HR leaders,
Okay.
senior leaders and managers, ERG leaders, and disabled employees themselves. We've got sessions
Okay.
for all of you.
And this doesn't just mean like your startup or corporate organization. This can be social services, it could be schools. I mean, this pretty much lives throughout any body of community, organization, work, unions, whatever.
If you have a disabled person in your workforce, this is for you.
Perfect. Well, we're going to stay in touch here at Beneath the Surface, and we are definitely going to be, moving alongside and keeping sort of up to date with what's going on. And you just let me know as things change, what we need to be talking about and bringing to the people.
Yeah, well, sign up for our sessions. Go to our sessions page. It's rethink-ability.com. We've got all sorts of stuff listed. All you got to do is one click and it'll give you the calendar invite. We also will be streaming this live, so you can just join at any time, pop in and out. So more information to come on how to join the sessions. But for now, go to the website and sign up for the ones that look interesting to you, and make sure that you've got availability October 28th through 30th to join live.
Awesome. I am signed up. I will help share and spread the word. Thank you so much for spending the time here today. This is really important, I think, to many, many people. So I'm honored to have the opportunity to share it with everybody.
Well, thank you for having me, for spotlighting this, for having the hard conversation around disability, because again, it's uncomfortable and, it's hard to admit you don't know stuff. So I think we just have to remember we're all on this journey together.
Yes.
I'm open to feedback. So anybody who goes to our site, signs up, maybe I'm missing something. I know I'm missing things. This is community built. So come to me. I want you to be part of this. I want to amplify you. I want to get you on stage and make sure that you feel seen and you feel heard. So anybody who's part of this disabled community, anybody who is an accomplice, actually that's our other archetype that slipped my mind, is the accomplice. So curious people who might not know where to start. We're running a session for accomplices to say, hey, I am a white person with privilege. How can I show up in the workplace and use my privilege to support disabled people too? So anywhere you fall into the spectrum, we've got something for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. Excited to get this out and excited to attend. So
Amazing.
I will see you virtually there, so to speak.
Yay. All right, perfect. And I hope we see some of the people who are listening too. And again, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's chat. I'd love to meet you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
He says it's a long way down, back to the bottom.